Have any of you heard of that game show called The Weakest Link? Raise your hand if you've ever seen that. There's a version now, and there was another version earlier about 20 years ago. But if you haven't heard of it, let me tell you how it goes. The game begins with 8 strangers who must join forces in order to win the maximum amount of cash that's available in each round. One at a time, each contestant must answer questions to build a chain of correct answers. The team's prize increases as the more consecutive questions are answered correctly. But an incorrect answer could end in disaster. Anyone's wrong answer will break the chain and force all of the contestants to start over at the lowest dollar amount. Contestants compete for more money after each round, but before they do, they must vote who they think is the weakest link. And then that person has to walk off of the stage in front of everyone and hear those most dreaded words on that show: "You are the weakest link. Goodbye." And that's the part that I just hate. Jane Lynch, look at her. She has such a smug look on her face. She stands there acting superior, and she's got that tone of voice and that pointing finger. I just can't watch it. If I come across it on the TV, I just turn the channel right away. I'm kind of surprised by how strongly I react to it, actually. And I think, if I'm honest with myself, it's because I'm uncomfortable with the idea of being seen as the weakest link. And sometimes I might feel like that. I don't want to be seen as weak. I want to be seen as someone who pulls my weight, someone who has something valuable to offer, someone who can keep up, not drag behind, someone who is strong, not weak. But we live in a society that applauds those who are the best, not the worst. I often hear someone who's been training for a race say something like, "I just don't want to come in last place, so I don't think I'm alone in this." How about you? Do you know what I mean? Are you uncomfortable with the thought of being the weakest link? Do you ever feel like you are? Have you ever been in the shadow of some top banana, maybe a sibling or a friend, a coworker, or a parent? Do you know how it feels to walk into a room and admire the strengths and the accomplishments and even the faith so much of the people there that you feel kind of small in comparison or unworthy? When you look in the mirror, do you see someone who is equipped to do great things or not? Our Bible character from the Hall of Faith this week is Gideon. Gideon is someone who considered himself to be the weakest link. When we first meet Gideon in the Bible, he and his people, the Israelites, are hiding out in caves. They're being oppressed by an enemy called the Midianites. The Midianites are just big bullies who destroy any attempt of God's people to try to get ahead. So we find Gideon threshing wheat out of sight so that the Midianites don't see it and try to steal his food like they've been known to do. And it's in the midst of this depressing situation that an angel shows up and says to Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Well, Gideon looks around at all of this misery, and he really doubts that that is true. But the angel persists. "Go in this might of yours, deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you." And here is where we catch a glimpse of Gideon's inferiority complex. How can I do this? My clan is the weakest of them all, and I am the least of my whole family. Gideon believes that he is the weakest link. And that's when the voice of God chimes in, saying, "I will be with you. you shall strike them all down." Now, there are a lot of interesting things that happen when you read about Gideon's story, but I'm just going to summarize a few for today. Gideon is very doubtful, so he asks the angel and then God for a sign, and they both deliver something miraculous to reassure him. Then Gideon musters a little bit of confidence and courage, and he goes to destroy his own father's altar to another god. Well, he's kind of got courage. He goes in the middle of the night, hoping that nobody will catch him. Then the Midianites join another enemy, and they show up as thick as locusts for battle. And then Gideon is able to gather 32,000 men to fight. And here's where it gets interesting. God doesn't want the Israelites to think that it's by their own strength instead of God's that they would win the battle, so he tells Gideon to let anyone who is scared go home. Well, after that offer, he lost 22,000 of his army. He was down to only 1,000 now. And then the weirdest part, God said to take the men down to the water and watch them drink. Only keep the ones who lap up the water like a dog. Well, then obviously 300 of them put their face down in the water and started slurping, and those are the ones God said to keep. Well, of course, Gideon was terrified with how outnumbered they were. So God told him that he could take his servant down and go spy on the enemy camp. And that's when he heard one of them telling another one that they had had a dream that Gideon was going to win the battle. That was the encouragement he needed to worship God finally and to believe. Then, in the middle of the night, those 300 men blasted 300 trumpets. Can you imagine the sound? I think 10 trumpets in a band room is enough to give me a headache sometimes. But they also had 300 torches that were hidden under clay jars that they broke all at the same time, causing a blinding light. And this caused fear and confusion among that sleeping enemy. The enemy fled, and the Israelites won the battle. Gideon's call sounded impossible by human standards. He was weak. His morals weren't great. His confidence was lacking, and he had inadequate resources. The weakest link was equipped to be victorious with the strength of God. And it's the same for the people of God today. God says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Like Gideon, you have a calling. It came with your baptism. You are called to shine the light of Christ in a world that can often feel very dark, intimidating, and fearful. But God provides the grace and the gifts to share the love of Christ with our families, our classmates, our coworkers, neighbors, even strangers. But if your confidence is lacking, like Gideon, I hope you'll be inspired by a friend who is shining the light of Christ despite what the world might consider to be impossible odds. Nikki was born as a healthy baby, but was shaken by her father, causing traumatic brain injury known as shaken baby syndrome. Nikki was adopted by her foster parents, Nancy and Mike Becker, and they are all members of Bethel and here with us today. They shared their story with me. I'm so grateful for that. Cognitively, she will always remain at a 4 to 6 month old level. She will never talk, walk, sit, or even roll. She'll be confined to a wheelchair forever. She's unable to eat anything by her mouth. She is fed by a tube in her stomach, and she is dependent on several medications to sustain her life. She will not be able to meet her own needs. She will require around-the-clock care for the rest of her life. When Nikki graduated from high school, a social worker asked her parents to consider how Nikki would fill the rest of her time. What would her purpose and calling in life be? As anyone can see, Nikki has a beautiful smile. She loves people, and she has one hand that can reach out toward others. So in 2019, with the help of her family and the strength of the Lord, Nikki became a smile therapist. Armed with her signature smiley face balloons, Nikki delivers smiles and holds hands. She does most of her therapy in a nursing home, but she's also been known to share her smiles and balloons with doctors and nurses, strangers in airports, and even pastors. Anyone who could use some sunshine. Her mother, Nancy, has been told by nursing home staff that there are times that a visit from Nikki has completely changed the demeanor of a resident so much for the better that they could hardly believe it was the same person. Nikki's mission is really just to be with people, and it fills her cup. How about you? How is God calling you to shine the light of Christ? Now, it's always a risk to highlight an example for a pastor because some of us are likely to compare ourselves to the example. So if you are thinking, but I don't have a story like that, or I don't have that same kind of support or the same faith or the strength like they do. Well, if that's what you think, then I am here to agree. You don't, because your calling is unique to you and your gifts. God will give you the strength to love and to serve in a way that fits just right. Imagine the possibilities. And for all of us weakest links out there, there's more good news. Not only does God's strength thrive through our weaknesses, but we are also meant to be links. And links, by design, are meant to join others. We are part of a bigger story, God's story, and that's no small thing. So remember, God is with you, mighty warriors. God gives you what you need to fulfill your unique baptismal calling in life, and you are equipped to change the world with the gifts that God has given you. So may we leave this place to enter our neighborhoods like the blaze of 300 torches, each doing our own small part, so that darkness will flee and Jesus will shine. Praise be to God. Amen.